So I think most people don't get the fact that when you're investing, you should be diversifying across as many things as you possibly can. Why do you diversify? It's to capture opportunities that possibly could go up that you're not thinking about, or possibly remove the downside risk of something negative happening when you're investing that you never thought about. There's all sorts of moments where things blow up and things go really positive and things go really negative, and you can never forecast those particular things that happen. And so, in order to capture that, you invest as broadly as you possibly can in as many areas as you can, given the weight of those resources in your life or in the world around you. And that's the way that you should be thinking about is, how much is the world made up of these various different things, right? And that's really the whole principle behind diversification, and there's different weights that you can put on. So sort of equal weighted is one of them in the stock exchange, and equal weighting all of the different companies that are in there, or value weighting depending on the sort of market size that they have. But really what you're trying to do is just capture how much of the world in various different ways are represented by these particular resources. And you have that in your own life, right? It's not just in the stock market that you should be thinking about, or, broadly in investing, is thinking about all the different components of your life and how that might look like for you, right? So for me, doing things and talking on podcasts and all of these kind of things is an important part of my life. That allows me to diversify and not just be reliant on one possible source of maybe it's income in the future, or just one outlet, right? And what I'm doing is taking advantage of the internet, democratization of the internet, and not relying on one particular source. And I realize that there's all these possible sources of getting my message out, or how I feel, or having all these things. And there's people that could bounce into it, or stumble into it, that I would never think about. And why wouldn't I think about all of these different combinations and diversify in as many ways as I can, so I can take advantage of them? We often think of this in kind of an unusual way, and we say, oh, I would never do that because it's so and so. Why? Right? Like, what's stopping you from going in and doing something that is, for me, like diversifying into social media, right? Like talking to a broader audience. What's stopping you from investing in some weird, like a tiny investing in some weird thing that you might have heard about, or feel about, right? Like, a lot of those things, you have to take a step back and say, hey, wait a minute, there are possible ways that I can sort of diversify and add value in my life that are pretty minor and pretty easy to do, that could capture a great deal of upside potential and minimize the risk of something happening. So, for example, if I do all of these podcasts, right, and it gets a moderate fanfare, well, then I'm not relying as much on the outlet that I might get from academic research publications, right? Like, there's at least another outlet of diversifying, the possibility of getting my message out and people getting to know me, right? And it's thinking about all the ways that you could diversify in different ways of your life, that you can smooth the sort of craziness that happens in our life, right? Like, as much as I love my employer, and as much as I sort of know that they're stable, crazy things happen, right? Like, weird, random things happen, and I don't want to rely on that, right? Like, I don't want to rely. It's like, I don't want to rely on a single employer or anything like that. I want to make sure that everything is diversified, so that if something bad was happening, then people understand what my message is, or where I'm coming from, or income wise, that if something really crappy happened, I have other sources of income that we don't have to rely. My family doesn't have to rely on that, or we could figure out ways to go in different directions. And I think this idea of diversifying and not relying on one thing is a really powerful sort of message that a lot of people don't get and they don't think about in terms of we're faced with a sort of idea of specialization, and that's an important thing. But then also, I think we should all think about how not to rely on one single source of something. And the reason is that's risky, right? Like, let's say I specialize and I become the world's best academic in a certain area, right? In my area. Well, if my eyeballs fall out, or I break my hands, or I get in an accident and I can't talk. Any of those possible things virtually makes me what my job is doing is virtually makes it impossible to do those things. But if I diversify in all these different ways and maybe I should get into dancing, or just kind of goofing around in very different ways, then allows me to diversify and you fully utilize me, and look at different ways that in case something happened, that there's another way to think about this, rather than thinking about my life is over, and like there's no other possible way to get around this thing than what I was doing before. I just want you to think about that. Like, life does not end when something bad happens, as long as you are flexible and as long as you think about all the possible ways that you can mitigate something bad happening in the future. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.